Welcome back everybody, I'm Jaran Gabbe, your host, and today going to react to a video called Inside the USS Enterprise, Secrets that NBC hid from Star Trek fans for over 60 years. Now for new updates and content you can visit the links in the description down below. Let's get started. Enjoy.
NBC executives once told Gene Roddenberry, a woman in command was simply too unbelievable for American audiences to accept. The beaming effect that seemed like $1 million miracle, glitter, and slow-motion film. The ship's name almost wasn't Enterprise. Every single one of those facts comes with a story behind it. Let's start with the one that still gets people arguing today. Fact 10. The ship nearly had a completely different name. Something this iconic almost launched under a name nobody would remember. During early development of Star Trek, the starship wasn't always called Enterprise. The name Yorktown was the working title attached to the vessel, before Gene Roddenberry and designer Matt Jeffries landed on the name that would eventually become one of the most recognized in science fiction history. There's more buried in those 4 letters on the hull. The NCC prefix in the registry number NCC 1701 doesn't stand for any specific in-universe phrase. Jeffries chose it because it loosely echoed real-world aircraft carrier designation conventions. As for 1701, he picked it because, in his words, it simply sounded right. No grand formula, no hidden code, just a designer's instinct on a deadline.
We're getting this far, but you will be dead in a moment.
Fact 9. Fans saved the Enterprise from cancellation. Most television shows die quietly when the ratings drop. This one got rescued by a small army of people with envelopes. After Star Trek's second season, NBC was prepared to cancel the series. Viewership numbers were not where the network needed them, and the show's future looked finished. What happened next had almost no precedent in American television history. A coordinated fan letter-writing campaign, largely organized by a dedicated fan named Bijo Trimble, flooded NBC with mail demanding the show's renewal. The volume was significant enough that the network reversed course and ordered a 3rd season. It is widely regarded as one of the first times in television history that an organized fan effort directly changed a network's programming decision. The 3rd season had its own complications, including a reduced budget and a time slot many fans considered a burial slot. But the show aired, and because it aired, it reached syndication, which is where the real audience found it, and where the legend truly began. The fans didn't just save a TV show, they accidentally preserved the launchpad for every Star Trek film, series, and spin-off that followed. Fact 8. The beaming effect was built with glitter. One of the most sophisticated-looking effects in 1960s television was achieved with something you could buy at a craft store. The transporter effect, that shimmering, sparkling dissolve that made crew members appear and disappear, was created by filming actors in slow motion while stagehands dropped glitter in front of the camera lens. Careful lighting amplified the sparkle, and the slow-motion footage was then played back at normal speed in editing to produce the distinctive shimmer audiences came to recognize immediately. The effect had to work week after week on a television production budget, which meant it needed to be replicable, affordable, and convincing enough that audiences in 1966 would buy in without hesitation. It cleared all 3 bars. There's something almost poetic about that. A show built on the idea that human ingenuity could solve any problem used exactly that principle on its own production. The Enterprise crew could cross light years in seconds, and the crew building the show made it look real with glitter and a slow-motion camera. That's not a bad metaphor for the whole series.
You interfere with me, with what I have to do down there.
Fact 7. The pilot episode was rejected for being too smart. A television network once rejected a science fiction pilot on the grounds that it asked the audience to think too hard. Star Trek's original pilot episode, titled The Cage, was produced in 1964 and featured Jeffrey Hunter as Captain Christopher Pike commanding the Enterprise. NBC screened it and passed. The official network feedback described the episode as too intellectual and too cerebral for a mainstream American audience. What NBC did next was genuinely unusual. Rather than shelving the project entirely, they commissioned a second pilot, something networks almost never did. That second pilot, Where No Man Has Gone Before, featured a new captain named James Kirk, and eventually led to the series order that put Star Trek on the air in 1966. The original Too Cerebral pilot wasn't wasted either. Footage from The Cage was repurposed for a 2-part episode called The Menagerie later in the first season, giving it a second life within the very show it helped create.
No transporter beam can reach that far, not even in our century.
Fact 6. Kirk once had to fight his own best friend. The second pilot episode asked Captain Kirk to solve a problem no Starship manual could prepare him for. What do you do when your best friend becomes something inhuman? In Where No Man Has Gone Before, the Enterprise encounters a powerful energy barrier at the edge of the galaxy. Kirk's old friend and fellow officer Gary Mitchell is exposed to it, and the encounter grants Mitchell escalating psychic and physical abilities that quickly spiral beyond anyone's ability to control. The more powerful Mitchell becomes, the more contemptuous he grows of ordinary human beings, including the crew he once served alongside. Kirk is left with a deteriorating situation and no clean options. The episode forces him into a direct confrontation with someone he genuinely cared about, and the resolution carries real weight because of that personal history between the two characters. For a second pilot, designed to sell a network on a new series, it was a bold choice to anchor the story in genuine emotional conflict rather than straightforward adventure. It also established something that would define the entire run of the show. The Enterprise's most dangerous threats were rarely purely external. Fact 5. The Enterprise was always armed for serious combat. The ship, famous for peaceful exploration, carried enough firepower to end a civilization. Beyond its primary energy weapons, the phasers that became almost synonymous with the series, the USS Enterprise was also equipped with photon torpedoes. These were antimatter-based projectiles capable of significant destructive force, designed for situations where energy weapons alone weren't sufficient against a hostile target. The dual weapon system reflected the show's honest acknowledgement that a vessel traveling deep into unknown space couldn't rely solely on diplomacy. The Enterprise was built for first contact and scientific discovery, but its designers, both in the fictional universe and on the production side, understood that a ship without credible defenses would be a liability, not an asset. What makes this interesting in context is how rarely the writers leaned on the hardware for dramatic resolution. The torpedoes existed, the audience knew they existed, but episode after episode, the most effective weapon Kirk deployed was the conversation happening in the briefing room, not the weapons array. The firepower was the fallback. The idea was always the first option. That tension between capability and restraint was baked into the ship's design from the very beginning.
Starfleet Command, top priority.
Fact 4. The Enterprise model was an expensive gamble for 1964. The ship that represented humanity's hopeful future was built by hand in a workshop for a budget that sounds modest today and absolutely wasn't in 1964. Primary filming model of the USS Enterprise, the 11-foot version designed by Matt Jeffries and used throughout the original series, cost approximately $6,000 to construct. Adjusted for inflation, that figure lands somewhere around $50,000 in today's money. For a television production budget in the mid-1960s, that was a meaningful investment in a single prop. The model earned it. That 11-foot version became the visual anchor of the entire series, appearing in episode after episode as the production stand-in for a vessel hundreds of meters long, carrying over 400 crew members. Every dramatic shot of the ship holding position, coming out of warp, or sustaining damage in battle ran through that one physical object hanging in a studio. Jeffries, whose name was later given to the narrow maintenance crawlways inside the ship, the Jeffries tubes, designed a silhouette so distinctive and so clean that it has remained visually identifiable for 6 decades. $6,000, one designer's instinct, and a prop that outlasted almost every other artifact from 1960s television.
But unless the message faded at that point, sir.
Fact 3. The entire series almost died when its star wanted to leave. One conversation in a hotel lobby may have changed the course of American television more than almost any boardroom decision in network history. Nichelle Nichols, who played Lieutenant Uhura aboard the Enterprise, made the decision to leave Star Trek after its first season. She was considering a return to Broadway, which was the career she had been building before the show. Her departure was not yet public, and her decision seemed final. Then she attended a civil rights fundraiser and was told that someone wanted to meet her. That someone was Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. He told her directly that her role on Star Trek was too important to walk away from, that seeing a black woman on the bridge of a starship in a position of authority and competence was genuinely meaningful for people who rarely saw that image on their televisions. She reversed her decision and returned for the full run of the series. Nichols later described the encounter as one of the most pivotal moments of her life. The Enterprise kept its communications officer, and the show kept one of the characters who made its vision of the future feel like something worth actually believing in.
One jealous god. If always makes a god.
Fact 2. The first mission of the Enterprise cost the show its first captain. Before James Kirk ever sat in that chair, a woman was already running the ship, and the network made sure that didn't last. Gene Roddenberry's original pilot episode featured not only a different captain, but a different command structure. Majel Barrett, who would later become famous as Nurse Chapel in the series, was originally cast as the Enterprise's first officer, a character referred to simply as Number 1. The character was portrayed as highly competent, analytically precise, and unambiguously second in command of the vessel. NBC executives reportedly objected. The feedback, as it has been documented, was that audiences would not accept a woman in that kind of authoritative, command-level role aboard a military-style vessel. Number 1 was written out before the second pilot was produced. Roddenberry didn't abandon Barrett entirely. He moved her to the recurring role of Nurse Chapel, keeping her in the cast in a different capacity. But the first officer position went to a Vulcan science officer named Spock, whose own emotionally restrained command style carried forward something of what Number 1 had been designed to represent. The network rejected the idea. The character was removed. And the irony is that the show spent the next 3 seasons building its reputation on exactly the kind of forward-thinking casting the network had just refused.
We're running out of time.
Fact 1. The Enterprise was built around a future nobody thought TV was ready for. Every weird fact in this video connects back to one decision Roddenberry made before a single frame was filmed. The USS Enterprise was designed from the beginning to carry a crew that looked like the world that actually existed, not the world that 1960s network television was comfortable showing. The bridge of the Enterprise placed a black woman at communications, an Asian man at the helm, a Russian officer at navigation, and a half-alien science officer at the captain's right hand. None of them were sidekicks. None of them were comic relief. This was a deliberate, documented creative choice. Roddenberry built the crew to reflect a specific argument: that humanity in the 23rd century would have moved past the fractures visible everywhere in 1960s America. The Enterprise wasn't an escape from the present. It was a counter-proposal. That choice is why Nichelle Nichols' departure would have mattered so much. That choice is why the network fought over Number 1 in the first pilot. That choice is why a show with modest first-run ratings accumulated the kind of audience loyalty that saved it from cancellation and then turned it into one of the longest-running franchises in entertainment history. In an era when Cold War tension made the idea of peaceful coexistence feel genuinely uncertain, a weekly television show was quietly arguing that the default setting of the future could be cooperation. The ship was the argument. Every episode was a data point. This has been the Vintage Vault.
So that was USS Enterprise, Secrets, NBC, hit from Star Trek fans for over 60 years. I thoroughly enjoyed it. These are wonderful facts, and I didn't even know that the original captain was going to be a female. Also, the fact that the USS Enterprise was going to be called Yorktown. What on earth? The beaming effect being glitter. That is a big surprise. Also, The Cage is a very good episode, but my favorite will still be the arena where Captain Kirk faces the Gorn. Also, the USS Enterprise model costing $6,000 in the 1960s, which is the equivalent of $50,000 in today's currency. Goodness me, seriously. Also, the fact that Nichelle Nichols wanted to leave the series and Dr. Martin Luther King persuading her to stay, according to her, was one of the greatest experiences she has ever faced. And from what I have learned, Gene Roddenberry also cried when he heard that. I did hear about that story before I watched this video. Also, as the narrator said, the crew being of different cultures, Mr. Spock being half human, half Vulcan, Chekhov being a Russian, Sulu being a Chinese person, Uhura being a black woman, and Captain Kirk being a white man, people from different cultures being put together as the crew of the USS Enterprise. Goodness me, this is a step far beyond. It just comes to show how great Star Trek the original series is. Seriously. That is why I prefer this series, and I don't have the strength and energy to go through the rest. Nevertheless, I absolutely love this video, love the series, love the movies as well. And a word of wisdom for today.
Logic clearly dictates that the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few.